Lesson 4. Everyday talk. Scene: Mr. Priestley's study. Characters: Mr. Priestley, Jan, Frida, Olaf, Lucille, Hob. Jan: You know, sir, I find that most of the things that you want to know when you are first learning English are never in the books that teach you English. Mr. Priestley: Indeed, I'm sorry to hear that. Jan: And the funny thing is that they are all the easy things to English people, but they're very difficult to us. Mr. Priestley: I think I know what you mean, but could you give us an example? Jan: I mean, everyday talk. For instance, what ought I to say when I am introduced to someone? Mr. Priestley: Oh, just, how do you do? Jan: And what does he answer? Mr. Priestley: How do you do, Jan? But that seems nonsense. I ask someone a question about his health and he doesn't give me an answer, instead he asks me a question which I don't answer. Mr. Priestley: Yes, I suppose it is rather strange, but we don't think of how do you do as a question, it's just a greeting. If you really want to know about your friend's health, you say, how are you? Jan: Oh, yes, I've heard that, and what does he answer? Mr. Priestley: Very well, thank you. How are you, Jan? And what do you say if you are not very well? Mr. Priestley: Just, not very well, or not too well. Jan: That's good, it's just what I wanted. By the way, do you say, good day, when you meet someone? I've noticed French and German people here say it. Mr. Priestley: No, the things an English person generally says are, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. If he is remarking on the weather, he will probably say, a nice day, isn't it? Or, a fine day, isn't it? Or, it's cold today, isn't it? Or, terrible weather we are having, isn't it? But that is not his greeting. Terrible weather we are having, isn't it? Jan: Don't you say, good night, in the evening? Mr. Priestley: Funnily enough, we don't when we are greeting a person, but only when he is leaving us or when we are leaving a shop or an office. Frida: There's a small thing I want to ask about. There's a little girl at the house where I am staying, and it is her birthday tomorrow. What shall I say to her? Mr. Priestley: We say, many happy returns of the day. Frida: Thank you, I'll remember that. And how do people greet their friends at Christmas? Mr. Priestley: The usual greeting is, a Merry Christmas, and at the New Year we say, a Happy New Year. Frida: And when someone says that to me, what do I answer? Mr. Priestley: Thank you, the same to you. Olaf: I had a difficulty yesterday. I wanted to send a letter to a friend in London and a newspaper to one in Edinburgh. So I went to the post office and asked for a 2.5 stamp for the letter and a 1.5 for the newspaper. The girl gave me the right stamps, but she smiled. What had I said wrong? Mr. Priestley: You ought to have asked for a 2-penny halfpenny and a 3-halfpenny stamp. Olaf: That's difficult. And what money do I give for a 3-halfpenny stamp? Is it 3 halfpennies or a penny and halfpenny? Mr. Priestley: Well, we usually say 3 halfpence, sometimes a penny halfpenny. Just practice this. A 3-halfpenny stamp costs 3 halfpence. Olaf: I see, and a 2-penny stamp costs 2pence, a 3-penny stamp costs 3pence, and a 3-halfpenny stamp costs 3 halfpence. Lucille: A day or two ago I was talking with some people and I didn't quite hear what one of them said to me, so I said, if you please. That wasn't right, was it? Mr. Priestley. No, we say, "I beg your pardon," or, to a relation or close friend, "What?" or, "What's that?" or, "What did you say?" Lucille. Couldn't I say pardon me? Mr. Priestley. No, never. If you're apologizing for some little piece of impoliteness, you say, "I beg your pardon," or, nowadays, "sorry," which used to be thought slang. If you come late to the theater and have to push past people who are already in the places, you say, "Excuse me, Hob. I was out to tea a day or two ago and the hostess asked me if I wanted another piece of cake, and of course I did, so I said, thank you, but she didn't seem to know whether I wanted it or not. I don't want to run any risk of missing cake again, so what must I say?" Mr. Priestley. Thank you, in English may mean, yes, but you had better say, "Yes, please," then there can be no doubt. If by any chance you want to refuse, then you say, "No, thank you." Olaf. I never quite know what to say when someone thanks me. For instance, yesterday I saw an old lady wanting to cross the road but afraid to start because of the traffic. So I took her arm and helped her across the road. Then she said, "Thank you very much. It was most kind of you to help me." Thank you. Do you know, I had no idea what to say. Frida. We say bit, or bitser, or bitchorn. Lucille. A Frenchman says darine, or pas de quoi. But what does an Englishman say? Mr. Priestley. That's difficult to answer. An Englishman in such a case looks rather confused and murmurs something like, "Not at all, that's all right," or, "It's a pleasure," and then quickly passes on to something else. Jan. Well, Mr. Priestley, this has been a very good lesson. You have helped me a very great deal. Thank you very much. Mr. Priestley, rather confused. Oh, that's all right, it's a pleasure. Passing on quickly to something else. Now, here are some exercises for you all. Exercises. Exercise 1. Use the following words and phrases in sentences of your own. Example: birthday, apologize, weather, by the way, greeting, for instance, health, nonsense. Exercise 2. Answer the following questions. 1. What do you say when you are introduced to someone? What does he answer? 2. What do you say if you are inquiring about his health? 3. What replies might you get to these inquiries? 4. What greeting would you give on meeting someone at 10 a.m., B. 3 p.m., C. 6:30 p.m.? 5. If you are remarking on the weather, what would you say? 6. When do you say good night? 7. What do you say to a friend on his or her birthday? 8. What do you say at Christmas? 9. What reply do you get to that greeting? 10. How much does it cost to send A. a newspaper, B. a postcard, C. a letter from London to Edinburgh? 11. What stamp do you put on at the newspaper, B. the postcard, C. the letter? 12. What do you say if you haven't heard a remark and want the speaker to repeat it? 13. If you accidentally push a person, what do you say? 14. If your hostess asks you whether you want another cup of coffee, what do you say? If you want it, B. If you don't want it? 15. If someone thanks you, what do you say? Exercise 3. What reply do you give to the following? 1. Oh, Mr. Green, this is Miss Brown. 2. How are you? 3. A Merry Christmas. 4. I'm 12 years old today. 5. May I give you another cup of tea? 6. Do you prefer your coffee black or white? 7. Did you have a good journey? 8. I expect you are hungry after your long walk. 9. How much is the newspaper? 1/2 D. 10. Thank you very much for all your kindness. Dictation. Jan found that many things which he wanted to know were not in the books that taught him English. When someone said, "How do you do?" to him, he did not know what to answer. It seemed to him nonsense just to ask another question instead of giving an answer. Olaf had a difficulty, too. The girl in the post office smiled when he asked for a stamp. He ought to have asked for a twopenny-halfpenny one. Frida wanted to know about Christmas greetings. In England we usually say, "A Merry Christmas," and the answer is, "Thank you. The same to you." Hob didn't ask anything. He didn't even tell a funny story. I expect he was asleep. Dear friends, thank you very much for your support, for watching and for liking. I wish you success in learning English. Subscribe to our channel, and good luck.